Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a really interesting tool, the Christian Beliefs 101 course from the Empowered365 Network. Now, if you're involved in church leadership, or honestly, if you're just fascinated by how organizations build their foundational teaching, you are going to want to hear this. We're not just looking at a list of theology lessons today. We're looking at a highly intentional, structured system designed to set a definitive doctrinal baseline for church leaders. And to really set the stage, I want to anchor our entire explainer with a pretty definitive quote pulled straight from their material. It says, "No church should even let people lead small groups without being able to understand and explain all of these beliefs." Wow, right? It's a bold statement for sure, but it instantly establishes the incredibly high stakes of doctrinal readiness. The network is making a very clear argument here. Theological education, it's not just for the pastors up in the pulpit. Before anyone is given the green light to guide others, even in a super casual small group setting, they've got to have a rock-solid grasp of the fundamentals. So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the foundation of discipleship, move into defining core beliefs, then check out the essential and moral doctrines. After that, we'll look at liberty and secondary matters, and finally, equipping small group leaders. All right, let's jump right into part one, the foundation of discipleship, establishing the baseline. The core philosophy driving all of this is pretty straightforward. Before a believer dives into the deep, complex waters of discipleship, they absolutely must have their foundation locked in tight. And to really grasp this baseline, we need to know who built it. The Empowered365 Network defines themselves as a Protestant, non-denominational, discipleship and ministry training network. They put a massive emphasis on being rooted in historic Christian orthodoxy, biblical authority, and obedience to biblical morality. And this definition, it's crucial. It tells us that this framework isn't just pulled out of thin air. It's completely designed to ensure a historically grounded, professional approach to ministry training. So you might be wondering, why does the network insist that people take this course first before studying literally anything else? Well, it essentially boils down to solving three precise problems. It's built to help students avoid the typical mistakes made by new believers, to completely sidestep common theological misunderstandings, and to dodge those distraction traps that can trip up believers no matter their maturity level. Think of it like preventative medicine for church leadership. Get it right at the start, and you save a lot of headaches later.
Moving right along to part two, defining core Christian beliefs, the absolute non-negotiables.
This is where the structural categorization of the theology gets really fascinating. The network doesn't just hand a student a giant list of 30 doctrines and say, good luck. No, they systematically organize them into three very distinct tiers based on theological weight. First, you've got core beliefs, which draw the line between historic Christianity and non-Christian views. Next are essential beliefs, which lock in the Protestant perspective on things like the biblical canon, salvation, and ethics. And finally, important beliefs, which leave room to explain the different yet acceptable nuances within the Protestant faith. It's a highly organized way to process a ton of information. Let's zoom in on that very first tier, the core Christian beliefs. We're talking about the absolute bedrock here. The course outlines specific doctrines like the Holy Trinity, Jesus Christ in the Incarnation, humanity and redemption, penal substitutionary atonement, and the bodily resurrection and second coming. The network firmly positions an understanding of these concepts, yes, even the complex ones like penal substitutionary atonement, as the absolute minimum baseline. If you don't have these down, you're not even ready to start a conversation about leading others. Next up is part three, essential and moral doctrines, focusing on church structure and ethics. Now, in these essential and moral categories, the network lays down some very clear boundaries. They require adherence to the 66-book Holy Bible as the final authority, and salvation by grace. On the moral side of things, they teach a conservative ethic. This includes defining marriage exclusively as being between one man and one woman, and affirming the sanctity of human life right from conception. From the network's perspective, these aren't presented as topics for debate. They are the essential guardrails for anybody stepping into an official teaching or leadership role. Okay, let's look at part four, liberty in secondary matters, navigating theological nuance. Now, this is where a genuinely fascinating dynamic comes into play within the curriculum, because while those foundational tiers we just talked about are incredibly rigid, the course intentionally builds in space for charitable disagreement. Take a look at this comparison. Up top, you have a strict, non-negotiable doctrine. You must believe Jesus Christ will return physically, visibly, and gloriously to judge the living and the dead. That's a must. But down below, they explicitly allow for secondary differences, things like the specific details of those end times, debates over spiritual gifts, or the nuances of Calvinism versus Arminianism. They're actively showing leaders how to hold completely firm to orthodoxy while simultaneously permitting healthy diversity on those secondary Protestant issues. It's a really smart balance. Finally, we arrive at part 5, equipping small group leaders, the practical application for churches. So, how does all this heavy theology actually translate into the day-to-day governance of a church? Well, it's all about creating a clear, reliable leadership pipeline. And through their Power Partner program, churches can actually monitor this exact progression for their members in a way that's super affordable. It's a simple 4-step process. Step 1, a member enrolls in Christian Beliefs 101. Step 2, they put in the work and master those 30 core, essential, and important doctrines we've been looking at. Step 3, they earn their certificate of accomplishment. And step 4, with that foundation officially verified through the Power Partner system, boom, they are now fully qualified for small group leadership. It completely removes the guesswork from onboarding volunteers. Now, you might be asking, what is the barrier to entry for a church that wants to implement this Power Partner monitoring? You're probably not going to believe this, but it's just $29. Seriously, for that incredibly affordable price point, a student gets 40 lessons, 6 hours of downloadable video content, a handy PDF summary of all the beliefs, and, this is the coolest part, lifetime access to discussion areas to ask the instructors questions. It is quite literally built for scale and total accessibility. And once a student crushes those 40 lessons, they get this certificate of accomplishment. The wording on this is actually really intentional. It states that the student has demonstrated a commitment to growing as a disciple of Jesus Christ and studies in 30 core essential and important doctrines of Christian faith and life. It's not just a piece of paper. It's framed as a high-quality credential that formalizes a leader's readiness. For church leadership, it provides a very concrete metric proving that this individual has put in the hard work and is genuinely prepared to lead. Which brings us to one final, absolutely vital question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Based on the rigorous standards we've just explored from the Empowered365 Network, take a look at your own community. Are your church's small group leaders actually equipped to explain the 30 foundational doctrines of the Christian faith? It's a pretty provocative thought, right? It really challenges us to evaluate whether our volunteer pipelines prioritize true theological readiness as much as they prioritize pure enthusiasm. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep exploring the foundations that build truly strong leaders.